Well, that's very good company. Uh, well, Carl, let me first of all establish my credentials with Carl. As far as I know, I am the only person who has ever been both his student, his research assistant, his co-author, his colleague at the University of Chicago, and his boss at the Western Behavioral Sciences Institute. So I know him well. I knew him well, and of course I feel tremendously influenced by and helped by the fact that I knew Carl is the thing that made the difference in my whole career. Um, Carl is usually not fully appreciated for the things that he did. In fact, is by and large, even though he was probably the most influential psychologist of his era, uh, he didn't get credit for it because people didn't know where it came from. Uh, he, uh, he was the kind of person who never really approved of his of starting things in his name, and of course, people wanted to always start the Rogers Institute and so forth, and he never would go along with that because he didn't want that to be the the way things worked in his life, and so a lot of people have followed his design of the nature of relationships that are beneficial who don't know where they got those ideas. And I think that he's been a tremendously powerful influence throughout the world, and more so than anybody I know about in the field of psychology, uh, except maybe Freud. But Carl also did a lot of other things that people don't appreciate. For example, he was the first person to introduce research into the psychotherapeutic relationship. Everybody only knew about the relationships in terms of how people who were the therapists described them. And of course, we never described them the way they really were happening because we always described them in some ways that would make us look better than we really were. And so he was able to introduce research that actually recorded us. He put the first, it wasn't even a tape recorder, it was a wire recorder. He had to put the first one into the psychotherapeutic relationship, recorded himself and the rest of us. And he got to see what it was really like. And of course, that was eye-opening to everybody. And both on the up and the downside, because uh, there were a lot of flaws and errors and things like that, but there were also great moments which we might not have been able to even see ourselves, that we could see once it happened, and so that was a big thing, and of course that led to research and gave us the ability to do all kinds of good research on psychotherapeutic relationship, which is entirely his doing. I mean, nobody did it until he did it, and then a lot of people began to do it. So I credit him for making this a science to the extent that it is one. And then he was also tremendously influential in in bringing the design of the. He gave us a new form for human relationships. Period. Not just psychotherapeutic ones, but the whole idea that a relationship could be this kind of non-judgmental relationship was so strange to psychology, and so, but it was also strange to parenthood and to other areas, and so it when he introduced the power of that relationship, it began to interest it began to interest teachers. It began to interest uh, uh, preachers, ministers. It even interested the military, believe it or not, and it affected them terrifically. So he did this over and over again. It was enabling us to have a completely different kind of society. Really, we don't even know what it would look like if Carl hadn't had his influence. So I'm really always impressed by that. And and then in the very specific ways, he wrote so many books that were so influential that he extended the reach and power of psychotherapy. And the fact of the matter is, he was also instrumental in bringing psychologists into the therapeutic mode. He before that, most psychologists did just diagnostic work. They did testing and so forth. But he was able to really make the case that this business of psychotherapy was not limited to medical people. And so, and he proved it. So he was able to make it possible for us to be therapists instead of just testers, diagnosticians. That was a big favor to us. And so he made so many contributions to this field that it's really almost impossible to credit him with everything, because it was so broadly ranging. But he certainly did those things, and he was personally influential on me. I mean, I had gone all the way through college, and it wasn't until I took a course from him in graduate school that I was electrified and decided to become a psychologist. And that made a huge difference in my life. And I'm not the only one, because he was electrified by almost everybody that took courses from him. He was amazing. We had never been with a teacher like that. And it was unmatched in my experience.